Hi everyone, it's Lennon, and I'm coming to you from the lovely fireplace because it's cozy time of year, and I want to talk today about bibliomancy. Now I'm not going to get too in depth on what bibliomancy is, okay? And just for like an overview here, bibliomancy is a form of divination that you do using books. And of course, that would be a form of divination that I use. Okay, who's surprised? So today's video is going to be on my sacred text, the text that I have used in bibliomancy. I tend to be using a lot, I tend to be wanting to talk of divination. I talked about scrying with the Thoth, and I'm going to touch on scrying like in a generalized term more on the channel. But started after the scrying, all the scrying videos, I started thinking about bibliomancy and other forms of divination that I actually do. So I thought, yeah, I'm definitely going to dive into this. So I have a whole stack of books here at my feet that I want to talk about. And I'm not going to get too in depth on what the texts are. I will leave all the links to maybe an Amazon link or just a link in general where you can purchase these books. A lot of these are still readily available. So, and I'm going to be like looking into the camera to see if my fire is okay. So forgive the crackling noise, but it was so cozy. I know my hair is a hot mess, but I threw it up because when you're working with a fire, it can get kind of stuffy, so. Okay, I have no organization with these books, so, let's see. Okay, when I first started doing bibliomancy, like I said, I've been an avid reader for many years, and it wasn't my first form of divination, but when I learned about it, I was like, oh, I need to get in on this. Basically, it's where you take a book and you flip it to a random page, your intuition tells you to stop, and you go off of what your eye first sees. A sentence or a passage. Sometimes in some of these texts that I'm going to show you, there's actual stories that I would have to read, like full-on stories. And then I can relate that to my life like over the course of a couple of days, maybe even a week. Not so much the moment that is now. So that's kind of how I started, was just to read a sentence or like a paragraph, Missy, and see where it goes. So the first book I ever did that with was Women Who Run with the Wolves. Who's surprised by this? That this even made this list? No one. It's a great text in general, but this is a great book for bibliomancy because this is a sacred text to me. All the sentences in this book that are gold. And when I thumb through this and I stop somewhere random and I read something, usually because of the way my brain works, I go to a highlighted, like a start of a chapter or a start of a section. And this one was no different. It says, like, my eye went to here and it says the third stage, the wandering. Yeah. This is actually in the middle of a story. So I may read the entire story again, or just read the first few paragraphs until my brain is telling me to stop, and then use that to kind of formulate some kind of something, see how that relates to my life. It's basically what's happening with this. Great book in general. If you don't know what this is, get a copy of it if you can. So that was the first one that I did it with. Along with Women Who Run with the Wolves, there are two other books. Excuse me. There are two other books that I use as sacred text for the wild woman archetype. I use the wild woman archetype a lot. I tend to use archetypes in general a lot. And there's something that I do in various realms of my practice that I do with this archetype, the authentic self, the wild woman, the untamed woman. And there's two texts that I love to use in relation to that. But then I've learned, after using the text for many years as a sacred text for the wild woman archetype specifically, I learned that through bibliomancy, it can really help me too, especially when I'm in the throes of using the archetype in my practice, let's just say, and I'm using my authentic self. I'm journaling and doing gratitude work and certain various spells and rituals with the archetype in an abstract way. I've learned that when I really am trying to generate some things even more into my practice, bibliomancy helps me to find a starting point. Let's say I've put the wild woman archetype itself to bed for a while, then I may open it back up and I'm like, okay, well, where do I start? I might be in that mood, you know? I'm like, well, where do I start? And I use bibliomancy to generate a starting point for research, for a spell, for a poem, something like that. And these texts are really good. I'm rambling, oh my God. Wild Mercy. This is a great book. Not necessarily on the wild woman, as in women who run with the wolves, but I can generate the wild woman archetype, the authentic self archetype with this book for real. And I mean, if you read this, it says, living the fierce and tender wisdom of the women mystics. She comes on wings of light. Is that not sacred text? That's sacred, okay? Just the highlighted things here. Like if I were to just read that and not go any further, die before you die. That's sacred. That section is holy. It just is. So this is a great book in general just to read, but I use this and I'll use those little snippets that I, like some of those ones I just said, as base starting points for, you know, starting something new with the archetype in general in terms of my practice. So like I said, with women who run with the wolves, Wild Mercy is also a general good text anyway, but I use that a lot in bibliomancy for starting purposes. Like, let's see where I need to start. So if say die before you die comes up, then I know that may be something telling me if I'm not already in my death devotion time of the year, which starts at Imbolc. I'll get more into that at that time of year. Then that might be something like I can generate some things in my practice before I actually get to death devotion. Maybe I need to have a funeral for something. Maybe I need to have something, I've let something go and I need to have like an actual funeral for it. So that can be how I start something using these sacred texts. And the next one has become my Bible, which is exactly what it was meant to be. The heathen Bible for the untamed woman. Oh, if you are not following Danielle Dulski, please go follow her. I'll leave her Instagram link below. She's got a couple of other books, workshops and things, I believe, but she's just, her Instagram pictures are like, I want to know this woman. But anyway, I got this, I don't know, probably right after it came out. And I read it, I skimmed it, right? Kind of like what we do with these types of books. You skim it and you kind of put it on the coffee table for a while and stuff like that. And then after a few years, you've realized that you've pretty much read this cover to cover. That's just how some of these works go for me. And then I learned that when I need something, and it's not specific, bibliomancy is not something you work on specifically. This is putting something, you're using intuition, using your brain to stop yourself. Like, look, I just opened it up, okay? And sometimes you can go even further with this. You've opened the page using your mind, right? You like thumb it until it tells you to stop. And then you can even just close your eyes and feel your finger on the page to see where it lands. Read a word. Journal about that word. Use that word. Go find it in magazines and cut all those words up and do like a little ransom note thing in your book of shadows or something. You know, this is the book of fire. I'm telling you, it works. It just does. So I use this for word magic, art magic, inspiration magic, and just as a sacred text in general. And also with my wild woman archetype, I'll use it for like base starting points, trying to, so that I can focus in on something specific using bibliomancy. Okay, the next one is kind of going off the same lines as inspiration. Art magic, okay? And sometimes I need starting points with them. It's like inspiration doesn't just fall out of the sky, you know? people think that art magicians, us art witches, they just like were always inspired. Now, I'm not saying that I'm hardly ever inspired. That's not what I mean. I can find inspiration in a lot of things, out in nature, in my home. I spilled my coffee and I make coffee rings. I freaking love to do that on shit. Like make coffee rings out of stuff. I just feel like there's a magic in that. There's an imperfection in that. You've spilled that coffee. And anyway, more on that later. But I use certain texts, certain pictorial kind of a text, like picture books, to help me generate some inspiration in terms of art magic. I'm sorry if you can hear Missy. She's like sighing over here in the corner. They're so sweet when they're asleep, right? Anyway, whenever I am feeling in a lull in terms of creativity or what have you, Florence helps me. Now, she doesn't necessarily always have to help me in terms of a book, okay? This Florence Welsh is the singer of Florence and the Machine, okay? So I may put Seven Devils on and just thumb through this book and be guided on all kinds of journeys with her, and just like allow her red hair to like fall on my shoulder. And it's so soft. And I think about all of the fabrics that she wears, those sacred fabrics. And I'm laying in a bed with her, and we're just like covered with her whole closet. I can go on some journeys with this shit. But anyway, this is a great text that I've used in terms of like art, magic, inspiration, bibliomancy. Much like the other text, I need a starting point, or I need something to just generate my imagination, get it to activate. Then I'll use pictorial books like this. I mean, look. This is already sending me on trips in my mind. Like, I want to get out some of my art supplies and make an evil eye to hang up. And it may look a lot like this. Not just like this, but a lot like this. Or read the words. Like if my eye, when I use when I'm performing bibliomancy, my eye may go to this page first, not this one. And it says, "One grand moment is all I ask." And that's a great starting point. Use that in terms of creativity. Use this in journey work. I've used this in journey work. It says, "One grand moment is all I ask." I can write down what that grand moment would look like to me. What would be considered a grand moment, a good gesture, What would that be? What would that look like to me? So this I use so much. All right. The next one is going off kind of like inspiration, art magic, magic, spell work magic. It's going off all of that. All of these texts do something to my imagination. But this one is like my favorite. My secret signs and symbols. When I saw this in the bookstore, probably at Barnes & Noble 15 years ago, it kissed my soul. Who knew that I needed a book, a dictionary, full of symbols? Using this in a bibliomancy way. Okay. Now, the death card in tarot has been stalking me for the last week, okay? But look what came up. I thumbed through the page. Death card. What are you trying to tell me? Am I about to form out from the chrysalis? Okay, enough. I'm being dramatic here. But anyway, this book is a sacred text to me, and it has been for many, many years. And in using this and performing bibliomancy with this, I know bibliomancy is like reading, but you don't have to. I can flip to a page, okay, using bibliomancy, like medicine wheel. That may tell me, that could be telling me how, in my imagination, ways I can utilize that. Maybe I need to make my own medicine wheel somehow with my sacred wreath making. That's what I'm saying. It's really helping me. Or I could just read about what that symbol is and see how that may relate to my life that is now. Okay, where next? I only have a few. Okay. I bought this as a very old library copy years and years ago. This book, okay, and you wouldn't think so, but this book is what actually made me fall in love with mythology. Edith Hamilton's mythology. It's this beautiful permabound, okay, I don't usually like hardbacks, but this, something about permabound, okay, it's just cardboard, but it's got such a sacred sound. This is a book. So I used this in mythology because it was one of the first books that I ever bought that had lots of those stories in it. Not just one. Like I had already read Odyssey, okay? But this had lots of stories in it. The way I use this is because I am a lover of mythology and because I'm a lover of Joseph Campbell, okay, which his book didn't make this list, but that book kissed my soul. Lots of his works kissed my soul. This book I use to actually read the stories. So I'll flip one at random, okay? Let's just do it. All right. And I can already tell that it's Hercules, right? My mind's taking me places right now with that. Anyway, I'll read maybe that first paragraph, or I may go back and read the entire story. Now, what's great about this book is that there are, like, a whole chapter is devoted to, like, the whole story of the Trojan War. But then there's little snippets throughout the chapter on something like specific stories, like the couples and things like that. And so I may go back and read just the story of the couple if I'm feeling drawn to that. It's just whatever I'm getting drawn to that I use in terms of divination and bibliomancy. But basically, I'm trying to generate things in my life now. Generate meanings, find meanings, and I do that a lot with all of these. And it's not like I sit here and perform bibliomancy with these texts only, but but this has been a great resource for bibliomancy to help learn more about mythology. Maybe reading this story will generate, my research brain and expand it a little bit. And I'll want to go and research more about that specific story, that specific couple, that specific god or goddess. And that may generate some things in my life. So that's been helping me. Okay, along those same lines, you wouldn't think that this would be considered a sacred text for bibliomancy, but there's something in the way that Manly P. Hall writes. Ooh, the secret teachings of all ages. Now, this is a great text. All these are, okay? But there's something about the secret teachings of all ages that just draws me in. It's like coming home, okay? I love that I got this very thin copy, because there's lots of copies out, okay? Lots of editions. But I got this thin copy because it makes me feel like I'm working in a workbook. And, it makes me feel like a student, which I love. Like, I just flipped through this randomly, and it says, Wonders of Antiquity. The text is really small in this, okay? Anyway, it's not gonna focus, but whatever. So I usually just read a sentence. Wherever my eye goes to, I read a sentence and then see how that may relate to my life. How can I use that in my life? How does that sentence, how am I going to interpret that sentence? Anyway, that's how I use this. I don't use it all the time for bibliomancy, but I have used it before, and it's just a great book. Okay. The next one is kind of weird as well. Just a few more, 3 more. Okay. The next one is kind of weird as well because, you wouldn't really think that you probably could use bibliomancy with something like this, but the complete prophecies of Nostradamus. Yos. Okay. Anyway, I'm being dramatic today. I think it's the fire. But this, much like Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Nietzsche, it's kind of set up like if you know how when you open a Bible, there's verses, right? It's kind of set up like that. Like verses. Real easy to perform bibliomancy with this because of the way it's set up. It's set up like a Bible. You could use the Bible if you wanted to, but I'm not. Me and the Bible have a very weird relationship. So, but anything that has like verses in it are very good for bibliomancy because it's just easy to plug something out. Okay, so I'm going off, and then in this particular version, you've got the French and the translated version. And first thing my eyes go to, a play on words, Milan being both the name of an Italian city and a bird. How does that relate to your life? Anyway, I have used this a few times in performing in my bibliomancy practice. Because these are prophecies, there's going to be a lot of city names, there's going to be a lot of people and things like that. And what I have learned, if like I said, the city of Milan, it's like, okay, well maybe I could research that city, see what it's famous for, right? If I didn't already know. And use, like, how am I using that in my life? Right? Maybe a city comes up and they're famous for sausage. Maybe it just means I need to go get me some sausage. It could be really simple. I'm just saying that this has been a pretty interesting text for a bibliomancy. Okay. Now, what I want to say here is, because I've been on for so long, what I want to say here is that I do not want you to exclude, like, storybooks. They are powerful things. I have been known to use Dr. Seuss in a fuck ton of my practice because he is sacred. Those books are sacred to me. I don't know what it is about his poems, but they put me to sleep. It's like I'm snorting lavender when I read his text, okay? So Dr. Seuss is sacred to me. Certain kids' books that I grew up with and that I've read to my own children are sacred and hold magic in them. And that's a sacred thing. But just to give you an example, Alice in Wonderland. This is my beautiful old Penguin Press copy. Look at that paint. I would have much rather hearts that look like a card, than flamingos, but it's still beautiful. And it's so, and it's got the illustrations in it because Penguin Press is pretty good with that. Tell you, this is a sacred text in general, okay? But using this in terms of bibliomancy is divine. When you do this, you will go down the rabbit hole, but you have to be open to going down that rabbit hole. Just jump. You have a bungee hooked to your foot, okay? Just jump off the cliff, all right? And be prepared for some wonky shit to happen. So that's how I can use books in terms of bibliomancy. Another thing is that you can use stories like The Discovery of Witches, The Midnight Witch, like actual books that are pagan or witch-centric, I have been known to use, like this one. The Mists of Avalon. Now, I don't follow a Celtic path, but there's something about this beautiful tome here that is sacred, and it's been sacred for lots of people. This King Arthur story is sacred to me. I love how Marion Zimmer Bradley writes, and I believe that using this in terms of bibliomancy, in terms of divination, links me to my own branch of paganism and my own witchiness and my own power, and I'm connecting with the Morgana inside of me. with the Morgan of Le Fay inside of me. So, thumb through a page randomly, go to what your eyes see. I grow too old for these journeys. How cool is that is relevant to what I have been doing the last couple of days. I've been heavily working with the crone, because it's my crone time right now. And I felt that statement right now. It works. I'm telling you, it works, okay? Get your hands on this and perform some bibliomancy with it, or just fucking read it. So anyway, that's all I have for you. Those are some, okay? I've got thousands of books, but those are just some of my sacred texts that I wanted to share with you guys. Go get a sacred text of yours, perform some bibliomancy, and let me know in the comments what has happened. Where did you go on your travels in the imagination? And come back for some more divination love, because I want to talk about some more forms that I do. Much love.